Is it possible for a single hidden modification to the suspension of an F1 car to make a team invincible? Why are rival engineers so worried about the MCL40, and what does Rob Marshall have to do with it? To understand the real impact of the MCL40 and its revolutionary suspension system, we must first put ourselves in the context of how and why McLaren has reached this point. Because what is presented today as an unprecedented technical innovation is actually the culmination of a series of strategic decisions, corrected failures, and a long-term vision that began long before the 2026 regulatory change. For decades, McLaren was synonymous with innovation and excellence. But since their last golden era in the late 1990s, the Woking team has endured a long journey in the wilderness. Bad technical decisions, associations with uncompetitive manufacturers, and an identity crisis that made them lose their status as a top team. All that changed radically in 2023 and 2024, when under the direction of Andrea Stella and with the young duo of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, the team regained its course. The 2024 car, the MCL38, marked a before and after. Not only because of their victories, but because of how they were obtained. With a car that behaved consistently, fast on all types of tracks, and backed by an increasingly sharp technical team. But even with all that progress, McLaren knew it wasn't enough to win again. They needed to dominate. And to achieve this, the time was now. The 2026 regulations represent a complete reset in Formula One. Active aerodynamics, redesigned power units, new weight restrictions and structures. This is not just an evolution, it is a revolution. And McLaren understood it before anyone else. While other teams adopted a conservative approach, improving on the basis of what they already knew, McLaren opted for the opposite, starting from a completely blank sheet. That was the turning point. The incorporation of Rob Marshall from Red Bull Racing was the spark that ignited a profound transformation. His philosophy was not simply to fine-tune what existed, but to rethink from scratch how a modern car should operate under the new regulations. And that is where the idea that defines the MCL40 is born. Designing the car around platform stability, to ensure that the aerodynamics were not affected by the movements of the car. And to do that, they had to eliminate pitching. Literally. The interesting thing is that this approach did not arise in a business meeting, nor in executive management. It arose at the engineers' table. It was the data collected during the 2024 season on urban high-speed circuits, long corners and hard braking that revealed an uncomfortable truth. The variation in the car's aerodynamic platform during braking was responsible for up to 15% loss of aerodynamic efficiency in some critical corners. No upgrade to spoilers or flat bottom could correct that if the car's very foundation was unstable. Thus the master plan was born. Redesign the front suspension so that it did not compress, so that the nose of the car would not sink, so that the flat bottom and venturi tunnels maintained a constant distance from the asphalt throughout braking, maximizing ground effect. And that plan required bravery, because it meant breaking with decades of F1 engineering conventions, taking enormous structural risks, and even redesigning the way the driver receives information from the car. It wasn't just a technical trick. It was a declaration of intent. McLaren was not going to wait for others to define the pace of change. They would be the ones to impose it. When a Formula One team discovers a technical element that can alter the unwritten laws of track performance, it does not publicize it to the four winds. He hides it, protects it, and refines it in secret. That was exactly what McLaren did with its new gem, a front suspension system with anti-dive geometry taken to extreme levels, which redefines how the aerodynamics and mechanics of a modern single-seater interact. But what does anti-dive really mean, and why is its radical implementation so impactful? In traditional Formula One, every time a driver hits the brake hard, inertia projects the weight of the car forward. This causes the nose to sink and the rear axle to rise, a movement called dive. This dynamic displacement directly affects the aerodynamic behavior of the car. As the front suspension compresses, the height of the flat bottom changes, which alters the flow of air passing under the car and destabilizes the ground effect. It is a natural phenomenon, but harmful. For years, teams have looked for ways to minimize it, but there was always a physical limit. Until now, McLaren has gone further than anyone had dared. They have completely redesigned the geometry of the front suspension, repositioning the upper arm anchor point so drastically that the system manages to neutralize between 95% and 100% of the dive. To put it in perspective, the best anti-dive systems of the past reached 60%, and that was already considered aggressive. This architecture allows that, when braking, the forces are not transmitted through the shock absorber system as usual. Instead, they are channeled directly through the suspension arms and into the chassis. Thus, the nose remains practically motionless, eliminating pitching completely. And that changes everything. And speaking of tires, this is another critical point. One of the most determining factors in modern race strategy is attrition. Every time a tire overheats due to unstable braking, every time it receives a poorly distributed lateral load, it suffers. Graining, blisters appear, or it simply wears unevenly. But with the McLaren system, the loads on the tire are much more uniform. By keeping the flat bottom at its ideal height, the car does not radically change its balance between curve and straight, which translates into more stable temperatures in the compounds. This effect is cumulative. A cleaner lap leads to a longer stint. A longer stint allows for a more flexible strategy. A more flexible strategy may mean one less stop. And in Formula One, one less stop means a world. Furthermore, in variable conditions such as cold asphalt, bumpy surfaces, or even light rain, the predictable behavior of the MCL40 becomes an unmatched asset. Where other cars must modify their height or engine maps to adapt, McLaren can maintain its base configuration with minor adaptations. This not only simplifies pre-race preparation, but allows the driver to trust the car regardless of the conditions. But the most intangible and perhaps the most important advantage is in the mind of the pilot. When Lando Norris gets into the MCL40, he doesn't have to think about what the car will do. He knows that under braking, under pressure, in qualifying, or in wheel-to-wheel battle, the car is not going to betray him. That confidence releases aggression. It allows you to make decisions without hesitation, attack curves without fear. And in a sport where the margin of error is measured in millimeters, absolute confidence is worth more than any other tool. This combination of stability, traction, consistent aerodynamics, and tire care is not just an improvement. It is a structural advantage. An advantage that translates into better times, yes. But above all, in a car that wins more when the others start to fail. At this point, the question is not whether the McLaren MCL40 is competitive. That doubt was left behind since the first preseason tests. The real question that begins to circulate throughout the paddock in a low, nervous voice is another. Are we witnessing the birth of a new technical domain in Formula One? And it is not a rhetorical question. What McLaren has built with the MCL40 points to something deeper than simply winning races. This car, this suspension, this complete performance architecture has been designed not only to exploit the 2026 regulations, but to set a new standard for how a modern Formula One car should be built. And here another key component comes into play: active aerodynamics. With the new regulations, DRS has been replaced by a system that allows switching between two dynamic modes, corner mode and straight mode. This is not a simple flap that opens or closes on the straight. It is a complete car transformation system. In corner mode, the aerodynamic elements are adjusted to maximize cornering load. In straight mode, the forward resistance is reduced to gain top speed. Most teams have tried to accommodate this transition with traditional hydraulic or electronic systems. But McLaren has done something bolder. They have integrated that active aerodynamics in perfect harmony with their suspension system. The result? Each mode change is made on a platform that does not move. This means that aerodynamic effects are applied with absolute precision, without variability or interference. While other teams deal with platforms that vibrate or behave differently on long straights and high-speed corners, McLaren executes its mode change with a completely rigid base. The effect is brutal. The car not only changes its aerodynamic behavior, but it does so on a structure that does not compromise even a millimeter of efficiency. This allows them to take advantage of every meter of the circuit, every phase of the lap, with a tactical and technical advantage that no other car seems to have today. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.